Yeah, exactly. Like I saw this UFO in Israel 33 years ago, Tel Aviv. Did I tell you guys about it last time? So I was with a group of people. So it was a multi-person sighting. They saw it twice. I saw it once. So I went up to we were staying in a rooftop hostel in Tel Aviv. I was traveling around the Middle East and Europe and stuff as a kid. Though I was 20 years old. So I came up to the top and they were all pointing up to the sky and they're yelling and screaming, like, oh, what's that thing up there in the sky? And I run over to them and I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? And they're like, we just saw this UFO and it went like this and it did this turn. And I'm like, what? And I was so pissed off that I missed it. Right. So I'm looking up and I'm like, please come back. Please come back. I want to see you too. I want to see you too. And then I spotted something and I'm like, is that it? And they're like, yeah, that's the same thing. And it was about a half moon or a 3/4 moon. And this was shining. So there was no lights on it. It was just shining. It was an object flying silently through the sky and it was reflecting the moonlight. And it was like have them out here. I haven't, it was like an icosahedron or a dodecahedron, like it, but it was split in half and the halves were rotating against themselves like that. And the whole thing was also rotating on an axis in a way. Like, and it was, so it was like a 20-sided dice or a 12-sided dice, or it just was a polygonal shape split in half rotating like this. It almost gave you the sense of a satellite, but it was like at about a silver dollar or a loonie at arm's length big, and it was silent and it was flying definitely in airspace. And they all saw it again, and I just went, it kept going slowly until it disappeared. And the only other time I've seen that shape, like I got into UFOs after coming back from that trip in the early 90s and the mid 90s. And I saw a sightings TV show program with this lady from Israel who saw the same thing. And that was the only, I mean, even up till now, um, there was there's very little sightings of that shape of a thing, right? So what so except for this other lady in Israel. So that's interesting. I mean, I didn't even maybe I did back then, but I don't remember if that was the same time as the one when I saw it or not. I wish I would remember that. So what is that, right? I don't still know. I don't know what it is. I don't have any real idea. Is it like ET? Is it some black project craft that's developed by some Israeli company? Is it some religious thing? Like who knows? It's sacred. It's also very like sacred geometry in a way. Like dodecahedron is one of the most powerful shapes. They say it's the shape of the world, that the world's made of. So when you go into ancient wisdom on dodecahedron, it's like the most powerful prevalent shape. All right. So I mean, so all these different things, but I don't know what it is. But what do you think after you see something like that, right? I mean, reality is just like completely different, and yet a couple years into the podcast, I tracked down the Kiwi girls, the New Zealand girls that were with us, and they just chalked it up to a couple beer. Like they didn't even change their life. They didn't even really affect them at all. Yet me and the English guy that I was with named David, which I'd love to try. I tried to track him down. I can't find him anywhere because he's got the most common name in the world, David Miller, I think. Like I couldn't find him anywhere. I tried to track him down, but him and I both had a very profound experience. And, we were working on a kibbutz together and we talked to we told the guy that was running the kibbutz and he's just laughing at us like no such thing as those. And he's this like super religious guy. I don't even know what religion. I mean, and so ridiculed from the religious people, ridiculed from the scientific people. Oh, what was it? A mass hallucination? Like whatever the answer is, it doesn't even matter because it's so strange. No, whatever the answer is. Like even if it was like a traditional, like it's a new satellite being flown up, or like even like whatever the most mundane explanation is still super crazy. It still blows away our reality.
What I find fascinating is people like yourself who have had these experiences in the 90s. That's what you're talking like over 30 years ago now. And okay, that's 30 years. But what you've had that many years of believing in this, and then suddenly 2023, 2022 comes, and they're like, boom, the UFOs are real. Like I've not obviously I can't say I've had that experience because I wasn't really here for much of the 90s anyway. But it must be a weird experience to be like because you would have gone through times doubting yourself, thinking, "Wait, am I actually crazy?" or not. And then suddenly, a switch flicks, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, they're real." All these people that we've labelled as crazy over the last 20 years, they've actually they might have had a point.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I went through like a lot of the research in the 90s. And I mean, I did lose it for a time when I got, I was drinking too much. I was in a corporate job. I was traveling around all the time. I lost my grip on like what I was truly interested in. So I went down the UFO rabbit hole for a while, and then I got sober in 2008, and then I kind of went back into all this stuff, and
What was it
read
that
about
triggered you to
about
come back?
what triggered me. Uh, uh, being getting sober, or the actual interest in UFOs and stuff.
Yeah, just I mean, yeah, the from going into corporate way of living, and then sort of flicking out of it into UFOs and I guess
Yeah,
the
I,
truth
I just,
community.
I just, well, I had a pretty weird synchronicity actually with it. I'll tell it if you don't mind. So, I took this UFO course in it was a college course on UFOs in British Columbia in 1994, 95, 96, somewhere. Yeah, somewhere in there, right? I took this course. So after I got sober, I was kind of getting interested in the UFO subject again, and I think it had to do with sobriety as well. Like, I mean, I was trying to find myself again. I was trying to be honest and truthful, and I was in recovery. I was like no more of this bullshit and lying to myself and others. So I was cleaning up my life spiritually, I guess you could say. So of course this stuff would sort of interest me, and I was thinking back, I might have even found my binder. I can't remember if I found my binder from the course. So, and I started thinking about the teacher, and I remember the teacher who it was, and the teacher of this course, because this would have been like 14 years after. It seems like that was closer together than I remember, but um it was the mid 90s. Now it's like 2008 and 2009-ish. Thinking about the teacher, and I had started up my own painting company. I was gonna like that's what I was doing after getting sober. Like, I got laid off from the corporate world. I was like, okay, I'm gonna start my own painting company because I used to paint way back when in the early 90s, and I enjoyed that to a certain extent. I'll try doing it again. So I'm at this Starbucks in North Vancouver. Like, this was a day or two later. I was sort of not obsessing, but I was definitely like had my mind on this course and the teacher. And I was listening to podcasts at the time, like rough podcasts. This is like Blog Talk Radio. This was back when like there was podcasts, super shitty quality. Like, it wasn't really. But there was lots of information back then, even, right? Lots of information back then. I mean, even back then in 2007, 2008, you could listen to whatever you wanted for free and learn about anything. Anyways, I go into the Starbucks, and who do I bump into? The teacher is in the Starbucks. And I go and I look at him, I go, see, now I can't even remember his name. I wish I could remember his name now. Maybe it'll come to me. And I probably freaked him out because I'm like, you're so and so. Do you remember me? I was one of your students. I took your UFO course, and I was just thinking about you the other day. Like, I started throwing all this synchronicity at me. He was kind of like backing away from me, like, who is this guy? And I said, are you still involved in UFOs and all that? Like, I was trying to like have a deeper conversation with him, but he was kind of like, I think I threw him off. And he said, no, he said, I just listened to Ben Grundy now. I'm like, what? So I searched Ben Grundy, and he's the host of Mysterious Universe, who then later on so I listened to his show Mysterious Universe, and somehow that connected me with Mysterious Universe, and then I would like leave them voicemails and write in. And then when I moved to Calgary, like, that has a genesis story of how I started my podcast. I mean, I gave that podcast to Darren for Darren to listen to, and he got right into that because it was super good quality. It was like the best kind of like podcast out there about all that stuff. So I'm like, all right, you're not into this. You're not teaching about UFOs anymore, but you just throw out this name, Ben Grundy, to me. So yeah, that's kind of, and I was talking about synchronicities because even in recovery, I remember writing my journal and writing notes in my book about synchronicities. I had a synchronicity in recovery about qigong. I was learning how to do. They have a qigong class in the morning, and I took a while before I was like, I was reading this book called Eckhart Tolle, The New Earth, right? And I was like in recovery, and I was reading it to the group, and I was picking out phrases to read to them and stuff. I was just total geek in there. But I finally decided to go to qigong because I was so super tired when I got there. And I was like, okay, I'll go to qigong. So I went to qigong. I had this amazing class, and the first qigong class was just incredible. That night in the recovery group, I opened up the book, A New Earth, and I looked down, and the first word I spotted was qigong. I'm like, how the fuck can I? So synchronicities were already happening, and I was already kind of making notes of them in 2008 or whatever. And then, then it built up to like the one with the UFO teacher. It's kind of good to talk about it again. It's been a while since I've like laid it out in a story, and it sounds better than I remember it being.